When you see a massive oil rig or a power plant, have you ever stopped to think about what keeps a tiny mistake from turning into a total disaster? Well, it's definitely not just luck. There's this hidden, super detailed system working behind the scenes. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most important ones: management of change.
So let me ask you this. How do you change a light bulb on an oil rig? I know, it sounds like the beginning of a bad joke. But really, think about it. It seems so simple. But in an environment where one wrong move could have huge consequences, it's a serious question.
Yeah, it's way more complicated than you'd think. On an oil rig, a single spark from, say, a poorly installed light bulb isn't just a flicker. It could be catastrophic. So the answer is you do it very, very carefully. You follow a formal, step-by-step process that's designed to manage every single risk you can imagine.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to peek inside an actual internal procedure from a company called ZPEC. They're a big global player in the oil and gas world. And for companies like them, managing change isn't just a good idea, it's a full-blown science.
And this quote from their own manual really says it all. The whole system exists to avoid serious HSE consequences. So what's HSE? That's health, safety, and environment. At its core, this whole thing is about protecting people, protecting the insanely expensive equipment, and protecting the planet.
Okay, so if even changing a light bulb can be a big deal, what exactly is a change that needs all this paperwork and review? This is a really specific definition. And honestly, getting this part right is the absolute first step.
And here's where they draw a really clear line in the sand. On one side, you have a change. This is any kind of modification. New tech, different equipment, a new process. That kicks off the whole formal safety procedure. But on the other side, you have replacement in kind, or what they call RAC. This is just swapping a broken part with an identical one. It's routine maintenance, no formal process needed.
This is where it gets really eye-opening, because look how broad the definition of change is. Of course, you've got the obvious stuff, like new chemicals or changing the layout of the rig. But get this, even changing the organizational structure or temporarily turning off a safety alarm, that's a change. Why? Because it introduces new human risks, new ways for things to fall through the cracks.
And why all this fuss? It's because every single change, no matter how small, could introduce a new hazard. And their definition of a hazard is huge. It's anything with the potential to cause harm. We're not just talking about injury, but damage to property, the environment, or even just losing money because of downtime.
So once something is officially labeled a change, it doesn't just happen. It has to go on a journey, a 4-step safety journey, to be exact. This process makes sure nothing gets missed. So let's walk through it.
It all starts with step 1, initiation. And what's cool is that anyone can propose a change. Then comes step 2, a preliminary review, where a supervisor basically asks, okay, does this idea even make sense? Step 3 is the big one, the risk assessment. This is where a team of experts does a deep dive. And finally, step 4, authorization. This is the final go or no-go from the higher-ups.
And that first step, initiation, it's not just a casual suggestion. Nope, it all starts with a formal document, a form, probably a lot like this one. You have to write down every single detail, what the change is, why it's needed, what the impacts might be. It creates a paper trail from the very beginning.
All right, let's zoom in on the most important phase of this whole journey. This is where the real detective work begins. It is all about calculating the real risk.
And this is not a one-person job. A whole team is put together. You've got your health and safety pros, engineers, people who know the systems inside and out. Their mission, basically, is to sit in a room and think of every single thing that could possibly go wrong.
And they aren't just guessing. They use a standard tool called a risk matrix, like you see here. This is so important because it takes gut feelings out of the equation. It's a way to score each potential hazard on 2 things: consequence, which is how bad would it be if this happened, and probability, which is how likely is it to happen.
And the entire point of this is laid out perfectly here. You start by identifying a risk that's maybe in the red, high-risk zone, or yellow, medium-risk zone. Then you figure out your control measures, a new procedure, maybe a physical barrier, and the goal is to drive that residual risk, the risk that's left over, all the way down into the nice, safe green zone.
The official industry term for this goal is ALARP. It stands for as low as reasonably practicable.
It's basically a formal way of saying, look, we know we can never get to zero risk, but we have done everything humanly and reasonably possible to get it as low as we can. Think of it like a seatbelt. It doesn't guarantee you won't get in an accident, but it's a reasonable, proven step to reduce the harm if you do. That's ALARP.
So the risks have been analyzed, the danger has been brought down to ALRP. The hard work's done. Now the final phase, turning that well-laid plan into action.
Now, not all approvals are the same. The level of risk determines who has to give the final okay. So, for a small, low-risk tweak, the local project manager can sign off. But if the assessment flags a high-risk change, that decision gets kicked all the way up the ladder to the corporate level. The bigger the risk, the higher the sign-off.
Even after the change gets the green light, the job is not done. And this last part is absolutely critical. First, the change has to be communicated to every single person who might be affected. Then, any new training has to be done before the change happens. And finally, the whole thing gets documented and filed away, so there's a permanent record.
When you look at it, this is a really powerful system for managing risk in a complicated world. And it kind of leaves you with a final thought, right? We all manage change in our own lives, a new job, a big move. What changes that are coming up for you could maybe benefit from its own little safety check? It's definitely something to think about.